On today's Patriot Nation podcast, we have an incredibly special guest with us. One of maybe my favorite people on Twitter, perhaps even one of my favorite people in the entire universe. It is your boy, Taylor Kyles from NFL Next Gen Stats. I mean, come on, dude. Like, let's go. Taylor, welcome to the show, brother. Thanks for coming on again. We appreciate you. We appreciate you coming through.
Appreciate you guys having me, man. This is family. I'm just happy to be here.
We're gonna put you through the ringer. We're gonna put you through the ringer, man. You're the tape eater.
Test me.
Oh
you're
yeah.
Giving me all these. You're saying NFL Next Gen, so I need to bring my A game. So hey,
you got to live up to it.
Test my metal.
No doubt. That's it. So everything good. Everything's good out in LA. Enjoying the sun out in LA.
It's sunny. It's hot as hell. I'm a sweaty boy, but you know what? I'm wearing a lot of white shirts when I'm outside. So
that's smart.
Figuring it out.
I love it. That's smart. All right, let's dive right in. Let's dive right into some football here. The Patriots offense really couldn't have looked much worse than it did in week 1. And it didn't look worse than it did in week 2 because I thought I saw some improvement, right? Did you see some improvement? And what specifically do you think the Patriots did better in week 2 than they did in week 1?
Fewer communication lapses, and not even really communication because they were all really on Trent Brown, like the really bad ones. There was another one of those on Mac Jones's interception. Alex Highsmith pulled off, it's called a coffee stunt, or coffee house, whatever it is, where basically a player pretends to drop into coverage and then they blitz late. And they completely fooled Trent Brown. He went to block another guy, and then Highsmith came in while it's Mac Jones. And that was the play where he ended up throwing the really bad interception. So, that was definitely an improvement. I thought pass protection, especially considering it was the Steelers, was much better than it was the week before. Although I think when they have one-on-one matchups, they're fine. It's really just about the, finishing your assignment at the end of the day. Also, Nelson Agholor actually got involved. He didn't really have a huge impact week 1, and obviously week 2, he looked like Devontae Parker, which is a little weird. And Devontae Parker looks like last year's Nelson Agholor a little bit.
N'Keal
Harry. So yeah, obviously having more than one person to throw it to outside of Jacoby Myers is pretty helpful. There were definitely some errors and ways that I remember I tweeted during the game that it might have been Mac Jones's worst game in terms of his processing and his execution after the snap, because he's usually on point with those things and he very rarely makes 2 pretty egregious mental mistakes. I thought he made like 3 or 4 in that game. So, definitely things they need to work on. I don't think there's a lot of long-term concerns with Mac Jones processing and everything, but hey, they're taking the baby steps. The run game was also very good against a very stout Steelers line as well. I didn't expect them to be able to run as effectively as they did. So like you said, definitely improvements, but also, things that you want to see them improve on as well.
And this is an offense so far. They've run, I think, 7 snaps of play action this entire season. It's something like that, one of the lowest rates in all of football. We're not seeing a lot of screens. They have not passed on a single RPO yet this year. From what you're seeing on tape, is this because they're still establishing stuff? I mean, the offense looks simple to me. Would you guess that that's just because they're working through communication errors? They had that delay game, too, because they guys on the same page last week.
They have actually thrown on a couple of the RPOs. They threw a smoke screen to Nelson Agholor, and they tried a screen. I think it was to Johnny. They got blown up. Just a great diagnosis by the
Was that an RPO? I didn't see that as an RPO.
Yeah, he put it down. Usually, I mean, if you usually get that run action that aggressively, it kind of, especially now that teams are more comfortable with RPOs, it doesn't make as much sense to really have the entire run action if you're going to be thrown outside anyway. So that I would have classified as an RPO. Play action was something that I actually said after they played the Dolphins. That was a whole topic of discussion. They only used it a couple times. But I remember that last year, Mac's first drop back of his professional career, he got strip sacked on a play action pass because the Dolphins sent a corner blitz on the short side of the field. And he turned around and was just immediately under pressure.
And threw it backwards.
Right. And then I think almost every time they went under center, they showed the Dolphins had some kind of blitz. So my interpretation was I thought they learned from that and were saying, okay, it doesn't make sense to have Mac turn his back to the defense, look downfield, and oh my God, there's somebody right in his face. So I thought it was actually a pretty smart move. Also, the Steelers, their team that tends to throw some blitzes and under center looks. But then Belichick commented on it this week and actually confirmed that, one, the blitzes were a part of it, because if there's a blitzer, the running back isn't faking anyway. So you're not really having a lot of effect because there isn't really a play fake. And if someone's blitzing, they're blitzing. You're not going to make them hesitate because they think it's a run. They're still going to be attacking downhill. He also said something similar, I believe, for cover 2 with the deep safeties because their priority is to play deep. That I kind of disagree with because last year against the Texans, they had a lot of success with the pulling guard. That would usually get the middle player in the cover 2 to bite up, and then you get the seams and the crossers wide open down the middle of the field. But at the same time, they're clearly using more spread concepts, which is what Mac did in college. So I think a lot of what we're seeing is them trying to – obviously, they threw out the old system because it was built for 2 people who are no longer in the building.
Right.
And as Mac has said in the past, again, I've said this a few times. I think it's a very underrated quote that he had where he said he expects to learn and grow with Matt Patricia for a while. So it seems that Mac's interpretation is that Patricia is going to be kind of like his Josh McDaniels because Brady came in with Charlie Weiss and then Josh McDaniels was QB coach and then there was progression. So Mac has a harder time, but at least he has a Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator who isn't running things. He's under Belichick again. So Belichick obviously is very good at managing personalities, putting his coaching staffs in positions where they can be successful. And I think it's smart to Belichick who's good at cross training, and Patricia is a brilliant defensive mind. So it's kind of similar to what Brady and Belichick used to do, where Brady and Belichick would have their meetings every week and discuss what they, what Brady liked, what Belichick saw. And that's a huge part of Brady's development was that he was learning from someone who saw it through a defensive perspective. And Belichick also learned because Brady is a brilliant quarterback. So he got to see what it was like through the eyes of a Hall of Fame passer who's one of the smartest people to ever play the position.
Right.
I think it's worth mentioning Matt Patricia also spent time on the offensive side of the ball when he first came into the organization. You're going to work with the offense when you're a head coach, and he was a special assistant or whatever it was last year. I think it's fair to assume he was doing at least a little bit of learning about the offense then. So this isn't a guy who just switched overnight from defensive coordinator to offensive play caller.
Absolutely. And then, you got Alabama system, which I think they're trying to incorporate. Mac mentioned that with the RPOs. He actually directly mentioned the fact that Saban would rip his defense because they would miss their assignments. And Mac acknowledged it's also just hard on the defense because they're playing run, but it's also pass. So they're not really doing something necessarily wrong unless it's specifically coached like, okay, this is the formation. This is the key. Do not bite on the run because they're going to throw a slant right behind your head. So they're trying to make it more for Mac. And I just think it's too early to be saying, oh, why aren't they doing this? Why are they doing that? It's 2 weeks. If you're scouting a team, you go through at least 4 weeks of film. Right. So we don't even have enough of a sample size to say, oh, this is a trend. There are no trends. Yeah. They came out with a different game plan than they did last week. It's like, oh, they don't use RPOs. They used 5 or 6 last week. Oh, they never used play action. They used over twice as much play action last week as they did before that. So we don't know what this offense is yet. I think it's easy to criticize right now, but this is their extended preseason. We're learning. Yeah. People are in new roles. They're seeing what people do well, what works, what doesn't. They said they scrapped a ton of stuff in preseason. And one of the biggest examples was their outside zone scheme, where in the preseason, they even acknowledged they were running into bad looks. They were running those plays. And I remember people were saying that Mac doesn't have any control at the line. He can't change plays. That's not true. It's the preseason. They're trying to see what they can do and what they can't do well. Great offensive lines may be able to compensate when they don't have the best look, which you don't want to run into anyway. But the Patriots were like, hey, let's just see what happens. If it doesn't work, these games don't count. So It looks bad. I remember I was saying it's not a great fit for them. What did we see in the regular season? They adjusted by when they had poor angles in the run game, instead of just having everyone go on that straight path the way you typically see on outside zone, where it's just a bucket step and everyone's kind of in unison, they would actually have guys pull if they were unblocked to give everyone better angles. So instead of, David Andrews, who is a very good center, but he's not the athlete he used to be, instead of having to cross the face of a really athletic nose tackle, now he can down block on somebody else where he has the advantage, and you get Cole Strange, who's a great athlete, in space to block those kinds of guys where he has the advantage.
100%.
So this team is still learning. Yeah. And you know me, I'm always the optimist, or I try to be at least, and I don't like having the big grand statements or anything. So maybe it's a cop-out, but I think it's way too early to make declarative statements unless it's, oh, they're doing this well, keep it up, or you're doing this terribly. Please stop.
Yeah. Well, and I think, what you mentioned is, I think, is spot on. Like, I know there was one play that, Andrews couldn't reach a guy. There's no way he could reach him. So Strange blocks him, right? And then and then Andrews pulls off him. Like those are the types of things that they had to make corrections on, and they did. And I think part of the thing is like, I know it's preseason, but like part of the thing is like just literally just put it on tape. Like it doesn't matter what the defense looks like. We just need to see you run it so that then we can correct you on the mistakes you're making, even if we know it's not going to work. You know what I mean?
And they said that. They've literally gone out and said, we're just trying to put stuff on tape and see. I think Belichick said it's not about the execution right now. It's seeing what we can do. You know what I mean? So if you're winning, like Mac said also today, we have a W and an L. I don't really care about my stats. That's what it is. And that really is the first month of the season, especially as Pats fans, we know, which just hang on for dear life.
Yep.
And hope that they find something sooner rather than later, or can at least grind out the tough games and say, all right, we're tough. We have guys who can make plays when we need to, and that's who we rely on until, Matt gets his rapport together with Devontae Parker. Kendrick Bourne gets back into the mix. Tyquan Thornton comes back. But this team is not going to look anything like it looks right now. It looks different last week than it did in the first week. You know what I mean? Right. So just patience and try to take everything with a grain of salt. The good is good, the bad is bad, but they're going to learn from this. And Belichick is running the offense. Like, let's make that perfectly clear. Patricia's calling plays. This is Bill Belichick's offense. Right. He's been coaching against Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, all these advanced schemes where they, Tua, where he's using the RPO all the time. But you can at least see, okay, you don't want to make this your entire scheme, but Belichick clearly knows there's advantages to this because we can't stop it. Every year we have trouble defending RPOs. Yeah. So he knows, what is hard for defenses to play against. They do their self-evaluations. They know where they need to get better, where their offense sucked last year. And now we're seeing them try to correct those mistakes.
So I guess my question here, we're talking about the way from week 1 to week 2 and learning from their own mistakes. I look at a Baltimore defense that at least historically has kind of like to throw the gauntlet at you. They like to bring exotic blitzes. There's similarity there between Baltimore and Miami and what they do on defense. Mm-hmm. So I guess my question is, do you think from what you saw last week, do you think there were kind of enough lessons learned and things that they can apply to attack a similar style of defense better than they did in week 1?
Let's see. Well, the thing is, if you're talking about like exotic looks and things like that, those don't really bother Mac. And that's something that people don't appreciate enough when you talk about, he doesn't run a 4-3 or he can't throw off his back foot 50 yards downfield. Most human beings can't do that. Most NFL quarterbacks can't do that. There's 5, and there's not a lot of people who can have the situation go to crap and still pull out a great play. Mac is very good off schedule. So that's one thing I don't think he gets a lot of credit for when plays do break down. So if you have a shift in the coverage and a receiver runs the wrong route, he can at least find a way to make the play work or save a bad play. And then before that, you don't see none of the blitzes that Miami or Pittsburgh were sending caught them off guard. You had Ty Montgomery, whoever was in the backfield, picking up a defensive back or a blitzing linebacker every time. It was just one person, again, Trent Brown, who was just having a bit of issues where these late rotations or these late blitzes are kind of catching them off guard. And Mac is also not someone who will throw into a bad look if the defense does change and like he gets panicked and he's, on play action, for example, when you turn your back, like you see single high safety, play action, you look back and there's 2 guys deep. And now you have to understand what that means all over the field and for your progressions. He's fine with that. That's not what I'm really worried about. It's how comfortable is he throwing to all his guys, with this new system, with them trying to work on everything. I think Mac will be able to take advantage of whatever the defenses give him. Like the Ravens, I'm not sure they're going to play as much too deep as they have the past couple weeks against this Patriots team because most people just go cover 1. Exactly. There's not really a lot of downfield threats to worry about right now. But if there's matchups, he'll find them. If the receivers aren't winning, then it's going to be a problem. I will say that, like I said, with the decision-making, there were 2 decisions that Mac made that I really didn't like. The pick to Minkah Fitzpatrick, obviously, where I will give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt in that he was about to get hammered and he knew that. But at the same time, you cannot loft a pass downfield against cover 2. It's literally the worst thing you can do against, that kind of coverage.
And they showed cover 3 pre-snap, and Minkah Fitzpatrick's pretty good too. So he's not the only one that's going to make that mistake this year.
I'm not going to lie. I didn't even think it was that much of a disguise. I don't think it was enough of a disguise to be like, they fooled him. Like, I really just don't even think he saw where Fitzpatrick was. Yeah. And then there was the play where he rolled. It was like the play against the Raiders where he threw the interception where he rolls out and tries to get somebody across his body and doesn't see a defender buzzing into the window and threw it right to him, but luckily it wasn't intercepted.
Yeah.
So it's really just those things where Mac needs to understand this is what I can or should do. And this is just the things where don't do them again. Like boneheaded decision, I get it. Everybody has those. Aaron Rodgers makes really dumb decisions too. Tom Brady makes not nearly as many as the average quarterback, but what I'm saying is even the best of the best make throws where you're just like, what were you thinking? So,
right.
The whole Deflategate thing was because of Tom throwing to a linebacker right over the middle of the field that he didn't see. That's what started that off.
Are we
to
talking
Quell
about
Jackson.
That? Are we bringing that up?
No, we're not. No, we're not. I could go on for 3 hours.
Too late. I can't mentally handle that conversation.
That's a different podcast.
You mentioned having faith in your receivers, and one guy that I'm already, I just Devontae Parker's killing me. He's killing me. He's just killing me. Because the thing is, right, is that not only is he not getting any separation from anyone ever, but then he's also, and it's really one example, but he showed zero fight against Xavier Howard on the interception. But the other part of it for me, and the biggest thing that's upset me, is that I feel like half the time, if there's a check at the line of scrimmage, he's over there like, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm supposed to do. What am I doing? And I'm like, how does this guy still not know what he's doing? Like, and I know it's only 2 weeks into the regular season, but he's been running as the number one wide receiver since camp broke, right? He's been running in that same exact spot. He plays one position. That's all he's got to know. And so, like, when they run a check at the line of scrimmage and they're calling plays out, you need to know what the hell you're doing. And and he hasn't, right? And that burned them. It didn't burn them in the Raiders game, but in the Raiders game, he didn't know what he was doing. He just ran out and turned around. And it was like, now Hunter Henry was running across the field. So Mac hit him on the run. Ended up being a nice play by Mac, but he had no idea what he was doing. And it just seems like that's happening too often. And I'm getting awfully sick of it. I'm getting awfully sick of it. So it just, I'm assuming you've seen the same thing, but maybe you haven't. I don't know.
It's week 2.
I know.
I would pump the brakes. It's frustrating. Well, I totally get it. Mac is throwing back-to-back interceptions targeting Devontae Parker in weeks. Like, I completely understand. But again, you know me. When it comes to stuff like what's going on in the guy's head, I don't really get into that. I have no idea. We could find out at the end of the year that there was some reason where you're like, all right, I kind of get that. It was the first couple weeks. Because by the time you're in week 15, you don't give a poop. I don't know if I can swear.
You good.
But, you don't care what happens.
I hope so.
By week 15, as long as you got things figured out by then.
Right.
Devontae Parker seems confident. They did show flashes. And also, let's just clear the air. Devontae Parker's not a separator. He has never in his career been a separator. What he does do is catch everything in his vicinity. He's big, so he can box guys out. And usually he's got that alpha mentality where, like he said earlier in the, I think it was the preseason, it's like 80-20 or 70-30, not 50-50 when you're throwing at me. Now, I think it could partially be just maybe he's not confident yet. This is a new system for him. He came into a system that was being overhauled. Even Jacoby Myers said that he was having trouble, although that was also probably because he had 3 years of the offer, 2 or 3 years, whatever, of one offense, and now he's got to, completely transition and figure all that out.
Yeah.
It's clearly not, silky smooth operation. So, there's plenty of issues on this offense, and I don't think Devontae Parker is the reason that they're struggling. They have 3 guys on the roster. They have everybody but Devontae Parker, who gets a lot of snaps, has experience with Mac.
I agree.
So right now, focus on those guys. If you don't have it with Devontae Parker yet, Nelson Aguilar was running curls on almost every one of his receptions last year. Like, sure, you can get him involved that way, but it's not like the X is the end-all, be-all of this.
Oh, I agree.
Control the middle of the field.
Well, listen, the other part for me is that Bourne's not playing. That's, I think, what's most.
He did more last week. He did more last week.
He
had a couple really good plays. They went that cross dagger, which so it's a crossing route with an in behind it. So if the defense takes away the first read, you say, okay, next, and then you hit it. Bourne had 2 catches on that. And then that was both against cover 1, which, again, the Patriots offense sees a lot of because teams don't respect them. And then you had Aguilar winning on the fade. And those are 2 plays where you at least have confidence that they don't have to just have the routes over the middle. Yeah. And then there's teams like Buffalo who are going to make it even harder on them. They're going to say, you're not throwing the dig or the crosser. You're throwing something outside the numbers. Like where they were playing with crazy hard inside leverage in the couple games where Mac actually threw the ball. And they were just like, there's absolutely no way we're going to let you do anything that isn't throwing accurately outside the numbers. So we'll see how efficient they are when they're really challenged in that way. But again, last week I thought was at least the step forward that you would hope to see with a team that's going to see a lot of the same defenses and needs to prove like, hey, can you, like, our guys versus your guys, can you win? And Aguilar showed it. I thought Bourne showed it on a couple plays where he had contested catches. So, baby steps, but remember, this is extended preseason. Frustrating. I know fans hate it, but they won a lot of Super Bowls with extended preseasons. Different circumstances because you had Brady, but it's a learning process is the point.
Yeah, and I think last week was one of the better weeks that their receivers have had against man coverage in the post-Brady era. You actually had guys winning stuff. I thought Jacoby Myers, in some ways, had one of his best games as a Patriot, just as a chain mover, and some of the completions he had. He had one, I think it was the fourth quarter where he won on an in route, and he just outfought the corner, got to that spot. You could see how hyped he was after it, and I think he's really coming into his own this year. I think he's taken his game to another level. I think you also have a variety of receivers that do things in different ways, that can win in different ways. We've seen Aguilar win outside the numbers last week, but they're asking him to do more over the middle of the field where his speed is really an asset. But yeah, he's so dangerous there, which, by the way, I think that could be a preview of what they ask Tyquan Thornton to do, and I'm very excited for that. But Aguilar after the catch, I think there were two different plays where he was about a shoestring away from breaking it for another 10 or 20 yards, and you could see
it. He was pissed.
Yeah.
They got him literally by his shoestring, and he knew if he broke that, he had the sideline. I know.
And I like the way they're rotating the receivers too. All five guys, if you're including LJ Humphrey over there, all five of them do something different. And when you rotate them, you put them in different positions, you're never going to have an elite group of three receivers on the field if you're an 11 personnel, but you're never going to have a bad one either. If two of them, you can be confident in winning and getting separation against man, or even one on a given play, that can be enough to move the chains, keep you going, and hopefully the big plays come with time.
Right. And that's one thing I hope that once everybody's more comfortable, Mac will see the field better. I think, again, a lot of his bad decisions have just been like, I don't think because we know he's smart. Like, we've seen it. We hear about it all the time. It's there. Like, he's good most of the time. He needs to work on his eyes and looking off defenders in the right circumstances. But there's not a lot of quarterbacks who really do that on a consistent basis anyway. Like, you'll see Mac just nonchalantly, like, try to pump. And he has a lot of just very instinctive things about him where you understand he knows how to play the position. He needs to be able to trust everybody to be where they're supposed to be. And then he says, okay, you're not there, but I know without having to look and confirm that I'm going to have another guy who's going to be open because they took this away. Like, when you think about it, anytime the Patriots were doing well under Brady, they had at least three guys he trusted. Usually one of the slot guys, whether it was, Amendola, Edelman, sometimes at the same time. You had Gronk, you had the running backs, Vereen, James White, Kevin Falk. He usually has at least three guys where he can rely on them to make the tough plays, do what they need to do, all that stuff. But when he didn't, and when Gronk was missing time, and then, Edelman's going to be out for this week. And then all you have is James White and a bunch of guys who he doesn't really target super often, or he doesn't have that rapport that you see with the others. That was when you'd see the Patriots. It's like, oh no, what's wrong with them? They can't move the ball without Gronk. It's like, yeah, you need difference makers on offense and people that the quarterback can trust to make those plays. I think that Aguilar is finally becoming one of those guys. Hunter Henry was last year, but he tailed off at the end. And then this year, I don't know what's going on with him, but he's not looked good. I like him as a person. I loved what he did as a Charger. I liked what I saw earlier from him last year, but he's hurt or what? But like, he's not running routes right. He's not blocking well at all. I mean, at all. It's really bad. Yeah. And I'm not, I'm not the kind of guy who talks like that, but it's blowing my mind. And I think why they put LJ on the field last week, because they were like, Hunter can't. So, but
I'm pretty sure Hunter Henry's PFF grade at this point this season is about the same or even lower than anybody in the group they had in 2020. Ryan Izzo and those guys. Yeah, and obviously PFF, you got to confirm with the tape, but from what I've seen on the tape, to me, Jonnu Smith is the clear tight end one at this point.
And I like what they're doing with Jonnu. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say the hard part is that I don't think Jonnu can run the routes that Hunter Henry ran last year. He's not that guy. So, like, without Henry being able to run those classic tight end routes that the Patriots have always ran, you don't have a guy that can do that. And so, like, that in and of itself is challenging, because to have him as a guy that was like Mac's number one target. I mean, at times last year, he was like the go-to. I mean, obviously Jacoby was always a go-to guy, but like he was like the number two guy on offense all year last year, or for good chunks of the year last year, and he's just a complete non-factor this year. It's alarming for me, you know.
Yeah. And again, he might be hurt. Like, it's just so jarring that I have to assume that something's wrong, which is why I don't want to like go in on him. He's never been a great run blocker anyway. It's just that this year he's like just whiffing. In Jonnu, they're actually trying to. I like what they're trying to do with him. They threw him a fade a couple weeks ago where he actually got open. Mac didn't throw a catchable ball. He won like decisively on a corner route, which I think is one of his best routes. He's a stiff route runner just because I think he's like a leggy guy and there's not a lot of knee bend. So when he's breaking at the top, he really has to rely on his hands. And Hunter Henry is good at that because he's just bigger. So he's really good. You'll see him usually like out leverage a defender where he'll run an out and the defender's right, on his outside hip playing it. He'll just throw him as soon as the guy tries to make contact. The way kind of you saw with Gronk and most
he got open a couple times on. He got open a couple times on that on Sunday too.
Right.
So some plays where Mac didn't necessarily look his way, but you could just see him chucking the guy, like getting both hands on him. And I'm going to go.
Right. And that's one of those things where, he's still doing things right, but he's also blatantly doing things wrong. And it's one of those where in certain situations, Mac may not feel comfortable expecting him to be open. And there was I think there were like a couple where he just threw short to Jacoby in situations where I was like, okay, you're trying to just, make it a positive play. Don't necessarily want to risk throwing it downfield. Certain situations, I can respect that. You don't go broke taking a profit. But there's also times where I just don't think Devontae Parker, the same thing. There's times where he's open as well, and Mac just is not looking at him at all. LJ Humphrey, although that one was less excusable because that was bad. Like I don't know if it was the go to Parker or the shallow to Myers that was doubled, but he had Humphrey wide open down the middle and completely missed him. I don't know what was up with that. That was another one of those where you question him seeing the field. But, I mean, if you only have Myers and Aguilar is a third receiver who rotates, it's a pretty tough position to put yourself in.
Yeah. And if you're talking about Jonnu as a route runner too, I was going through some of the tape right before this, and I thought I noticed they asked him to run more overs last week, and I don't think he had great feel on it. He doesn't.
Yeah, no, he doesn't.
If the guy's in off coverage, he's still kind of waiting on the break and taking it awkwardly and letting the guy get back into the play instead of just going across the field. So you have now it's becoming a contested catch situation if they try to throw it. And on Parker down the field too. I mean, we saw Aguilar didn't get a lot of looks at points last year. I wonder if some of it's being the X receiver for Mac, if he's just not as comfortable throwing those. It's also a chemistry thing. I don't think they have that trust yet, like you said. And that's why in this sport, it matters a lot more what you're doing in week 15 than what you're doing in week 3.
Right. And I think they want to. Like, I don't think it's that, Mac doesn't like throwing to the X, because we saw him preseason. I think we saw a little earlier this year. If he gets the one-on-one matchups, he wants to take them. Like last year, almost every time the Dolphins played cover one in the first game, he tried to throw a fade. Almost every time. He's trying to take advantage of those opportunities where he's like, all right, it's my guy versus your guy. Let's see who can make the plays. Who's made them so far? Jacoby and Aguilar. And, obviously he missed it. And Myers and Kendrick Bourne. Three guys that he's used to. And who did he miss to? Jonnu Smith, who he's not really used to throwing to downfield. He missed to Devontae Parker twice because, I feel like he just kind of locks in on him once he's downfield and says, I'm throwing it to my guy. But like you said, like we both said, it's going to take time. They need to get more comfortable. We'll see what happens. But what I do like is how aggressive Mac is being. He's not taking the short stuff. There's some times where he'll check it down. And again, that's him just, I think, being smart and just saying, hey, I'll put us in a good position, or if we have to convert 3rd and 2, we can do that. That's not a problem for them. They're very good in 3rd and manageable situations. But when they get the penalties and they keep getting freaking 2nd and 20, 3rd and 16.
Yeah, not good.
You can't ask your offense to consistently convert those situations. And that's been a problem going back to last year. The dumb penalties that get them in these positions where they have to make these spectacular plays or they end up going 3 and out. So that's another thing that we need to talk about is them staying on schedule. When they're on schedule, they're usually okay. When they get in long yardage and teams know what's going to happen, it makes it that much harder on a receiving core that just is clearly still trying to find its way.
When you look at the penalties and the missed field goal last week, well, that's 52 yards. They probably should have had 23, 27 points, depending on how you're looking at it. There were a lot more opportunities there. And I think we're talking about this a lot differently if they get in the end zone one more time, or if they just add one more field goal, if they're just not making some of these dumb mistakes. And also just from a statistical perspective, they had 9 drives where they were trying to score. You add like You had just that one missed field goal, and all of a sudden you're over 2 points a drive, and people were talking about, all right, this offense is doing pretty decently.
Well, I think too,
Right.
like when you look at it and say, okay, it was a 52-yard field goal, which it was, but on third down, Isaiah Wynn jumps and gets a false start. Now that's a 47-yard field goal instead of a 52-yard field goal. And Nick Folk turns into a pumpkin at 50 yards. He just he's amazing. Inside of 50, he's amazing. He's locked in. He's like the best kicker in the league inside of 50 yards. He hits that 50-yard marker for some reason, and he's like
I mean, isn't he the oldest guy on the team?
He
might be one of the oldest guys on
He
the
might
team,
be,
to be
yeah.
fair. Like,
It's
No, it is. I
that's-
mean, that's,
he and Devin are the
yeah.
guys.
I mean,
that
you
are
take
up
it.
there.
Listen, I will never complain about Nick Folk because he's so automatic inside the 50. It doesn't matter. And if we're kicking field goals that are 55 yards, it's like, look, I mean, that's a shot in the dark, anyways. Like unless you have Justin Tucker, like it's just you're not guaranteed to hit that. So I'll take it.
Also,
later.
It's still so weird. It's still so weird to me how much we love Nick Folk after what he did to us as a Jet.
I know.
It's still bizarre. Sometimes I'm like, I still see you kicking the winning field goal after that stupid penalty on Chris Jones in like 2015.
Oh, you mean
2013.
the penalty that you mean the penalty that was never called before or after?
Literally, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I will never forget.
Yeah, no,
that.
don't worry. We haven't forgotten. But he does
Right.
good things for us now.
You've just
Exactly,
brought back
exactly.
some very, very specific memories of me from that
Yeah, I'm
day.
sorry.
So
I'm sorry.
thanks.
I'm sorry.
No, not great. So, all right, let's get away from the Patriots offense because I think we've done a pretty good job of getting in depth on them. And I think the thing that everyone, I would think, would be most concerned about going into this week is how the defense is going to somehow stop this Ravens offense. Lamar Jackson is playing outside of his mind right now. And, Baltimore's defense hasn't been good certainly wasn't good in the second half on Sunday, but hasn't been great. Their offense has been great. And that's without a running game. And they might be getting it looks like they're going to be getting J.K. Dobbins back this week, so their running game might be a little bit better. How do the Patriots go about slowing this Ravens team down to keep the points down to give them a chance to win this game?
I think it's going to sound weird to some people saying that you want the Ravens to run like as much as possible. But then when you propose the alternative of the fact that Rashad Bateman has 2 50-plus yard touchdowns and the fact that Mark Andrews is the best crossing route runner in the entire league, you think, okay, maybe play a little more too high on early downs, like maybe prioritize coverage. Now, in the run game, the only person who scares you is Lamar Jackson. They have not had J.K. Dobbins obviously being hurt is a huge blow. But right now, their backfield is not impressive. I would love for their running backs to get 30 carries. I think that's how you win the game. You just beg them to run the ball.
Are we just taking the Bill Belichick game plan from the Super Bowl when he was with the Giants?
Too high.
Yeah, dude. Lamar's got the arm, and again, I was watching him. The criticism around him is absolutely absurd. I remember there was a play that he had against the Dolphins. They were playing cover 3. And Andrews was running a seam. Javon Holland's right in the middle of the field. We all know Javon Holland is not a guy you want to mess with. Lamar fakes the ball. He looks left for just like a split second to hold Javon Holland, and then without hesitation goes right and throws a dime right between 2 defenders to Mark Andrews for what should have been like a 25-ish yard touchdown, I think, and they ruled it down like a couple yards short. But it was one of those plays where it's very clear that if you think Lamar Jackson's not a good quarterback, it's on you. Is he inconsistent? Sure. Most guys are inconsistent. He does things that no one else can do. And then I feel like his athleticism and the fact he can run is used against him, but he's his own checkdown option. They literally have the running backs block instead of go a lot of times for checkdowns because you'd rather have Lamar Jackson in the open field than you would who's 17 in the backfield. I forgot who it was. I think it's Kenyon Drake.
Kenyon Drake.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
I don't, Lamar Jackson.
The fact that you don't know the name there, I think, says a lot about
that was so bad.
Ravens
I feel bad though. That's on me. I'm sorry.
He was cut
Kenyon,
by the
I
Raiders.
watched
Like,
it.
come on. It's like,
Yeah,
let's be
that's
serious.
true.
It's okay.
And
But,
he's wearing number 17. We know the Patriots number 17 jersey curse. I just kind of assumed that
Hopefully
that
Foxborough
expands
will
on the-
just that.
If a
bad
running,
luck,
I mean,
bad
he's a
juju.
running back wearing 17. That should be illegal.
They had another running back in 17 last year too. I don't know what it is with Ravens
So
running
dumb.
backs wearing 17. That's so bizarre.
The
Makes no
Patriots
sense.
just
it's not
signed somebody to
24
the
on a
practice
receiver though.
squad.
So, I'm sorry. Who was that?
The Pats just signed, was it Viz Cayeno back to the practice squad, and he's
Yeah.
wearing 17 as a kicker. That's the
That's
stat of that.
ridiculous.
No, that's the state.
At
of
least
that.
he's not on the field. We don't have to worry about it right now.
That's a
Yeah.
good point. That's a great
Yeah.
point.
But yet you were talking about Lamar as a passer. Nate
Yes,
Tice
yes.
for The Athletic was talking about this in his article. I think this was either maybe yesterday or today, just looking at week 2. But Lamar's like career high numbers for passes from inside the pocket, under center drop backs, EPA per drop back, scramble percentage is lower, his designed rush percentage is lower.
Yeah.
He's doing all this. I mean, he is
A
basically
lot more under center stuff as well, I noticed. Like, because they
Yeah.
used to be just like gun, pistol, like it's Lamar, but now a lot of their play action stuff is the boots and all that stuff that you tend to see, which is new.
In some ways, it's almost like an early 2000s Patriots offense where it's going to be under center, lots of tight ends, except instead of throwing to the back and the flat, it's just Lamar taking off. Obviously, it's not exactly the same, but it's more like that than I think you would expect. And it's different from the team we saw come into Foxborough in 2020.
Yeah, and the unique thing about Lamar, too, is that I noticed he will target the deepest non-clear out concept if it's there every time. And there were a few where I was like, oh, that's a tight window. Like, I'm used to Matt, so I know he'll probably take the safer throw. You know, he knows his strengths and weaknesses. Lamar will take those like 20-yard. There was like a post-wheel combo where there was a very small window on the sideline. Lamar put it exactly where he needed to. So that's what scares me is that, and especially the past 2 weeks, because Tua and Mitch Trubisky
They're not hitting those windows.
they were plenty of opportunities for them to really gouge the defense, honestly, especially against man. They had some miscommunications. And then the linebackers have been having a little bit of trouble covering routes over the middle off play action. What you'll see a lot from like Juwan Bentley is he'll robot when he realizes it's play action, which means instead of just dropping back, he'll turn around and try to find the first crossing route he sees. And that's how you usually deter those throws. Raekwon McMillan struggled a couple times doing that, and I noticed that there were some big plays at the past 2 games quarterbacks had missed. Lamar's not going to miss those.
Matt Wilson struggled with that too week 1. There were, I think, back-to-back plays where he got caught looking in the wrong direction when he got his head back around, and that was all the space that they needed to hit that throw over the middle.
Exactly. So Lamar as a runner doesn't even scare me really as much, because if you really want to stop him, you're going to put Mac Wilson on the field. You get, even if Kyle Duggar's out, at least you got Peppers, you got Adrian Phillips. You know, they kind of, what they did last time they played was they used a 3-3 stack. So it's 3 down linemen and 3 linebackers behind them. They used 2 safeties on the outside of that structure, basically to deter Lamar from keeping it because you got speed on the outside.
Yeah.
And anytime the Ravens would put a tight end on the line of scrimmage, they would have the outside linebacker to that side. Instead of being right behind the defensive line, he would rotate down so that he could engage him and set the edge, knowing that Lamar's probably going to try to hit backside. So you keep that linebacker, give him depth to help him chase or do whatever he's got to do. So I think they have the athletes, especially John Jones. He can spy. He has done a fantastic job the past 2 times they played Lamar. When he was asked to watch him while everybody had their backs turned to man coverage. I'm not really worried about Lamar, the athlete. I'm worried about Lamar, the passer, because there has been opportunities in the secondary, specifically Jalen Mills. He got turned around a few times by the Steelers. Great receivers who are also very good route runners, but not the kind of thing you want to see from the guy who's supposed to be your top corner.
Yeah.
Miles Bryant, I think he's solid, but man, if you put an athlete against him, I don't like the matchup. And I know why it hasn't been exploited, because they played Mitch Trubisky and Tua Tagovailoa, who I think are probably great people, but they're not very good quarterbacks. So yeah, I'm very worried, honestly, about Lamar just taking the top off the defense, although I think that will be that priority. And I think they understand how important that is, especially this week, because it's Lamar and not those other guys. Yeah. So, if I'm giving it the, Patriots fan, Bill Belichick is going to get the defense ready, then it gives me some comfort, but yeah, I mean, Lamar is very capable of making this defense look bad if they're not on their P's and Q's.
So, you say all that, right? And it is strange, right, that Lamar isn't treated as the pocket passer and the passer that he is. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the skin color at all. But I do think
never happens in the NFL.
Right? That
what's the shirt Taylor's wearing?
And you mentioned, right? You mentioned like putting athletes on the field, right? And guys that can run, right, and are athletic. Right. And now this week now, who Devin Duvernay is popped up on the injured list. Who knows if he'll be healthy for the game or not. But him and Bateman are guys that have ridiculous amounts of speed, right? You mentioned Bateman's caught, 2 passes for over 50 yards for touchdowns. You would think, one would assume you would want to have athletes on the field. Now, hypothetically, let's just say the Patriots drafted a guy, just hypothetically, with insane athletic ability.
I think I know where this is going.
Super fast, super athletic, plays corner, looked really good in the early parts of the preseason, and then got buried in the depth chart for no discernible reason. Do you think maybe they might break Marcus Jones out this week and actually play him? That might make sense, wouldn't it?
Until you mentioned the depth chart, it also sounded like Jack Jones, who has been playing. So I think I'm really not sure how exactly it's being divvied up, because obviously in training camp, Marcus Jones was the guy who was getting rotations with the ones, not as much Jack Jones. And now we're seeing Jack Jones subbing in for Jalen Mills. Sometimes he had a snap against Tyreek Hill in the season opener where they trusted him in man coverage. He got mossed on a great play by Tyreek Hill, but you at least like to see that he was competitive on the play.
Welcome to the NFL.
Right. I think the whole situation with Marcus Jones is if Miles Bryant gets toasted in a game where it's like the Bills game, where if you get a fast guy and it's a smart offensive coordinator who's just going to spam a mismatch until you show that you're not going to let them do it, I think that's when you're going to see Marcus Jones. He's gotten I think he got a few reps against the Dolphins. I don't think he had any last week.
He was
healthy scratch.
Scratch last
week.
There you
go. Yeah. There you go. But I have to actually do a deep dive. I haven't done a special teams deep dive other than DeMarcus Mitchell, who's a beast.
Yeah.
So I'm not totally sure how much Jack Jones is doing on special teams, but clearly he's doing something in practice. And also, I made the prediction after they got drafted and I watched them. I was like, Jack Jones is probably going to be the guy who starts before anybody else. Obviously, Tyquan Thornton was fantastic, and I was very happy for him to prove me wrong as someone who looked more like a starter. But I think Jack Jones is plenty good, and I think that he's deserved his reps. But Marcus Jones thing, I think it's just because they trust Miles Bryant. It was kind of weird, and I didn't exactly realize it, but he's been on the team since 2020. When I saw him against the Ravens, I was like, oh, yeah, he's actually been on the team for a minute. Right. So I think a lot of it is continuity, and he's not very athletic. And he'll miss a couple tackles, which I don't like because that should be like his thing. Right. But he is strong. He's smart. He has some ball skills when he's in the area. So I think it's just right now you go with the guy who you can rely on to at least not make crucial mistakes.
It drives me insane. That and I know that's a Belichick thing. It just drives me crazy. The punt return thing. Yeah. I mean, almost cost him a touchdown. It was just inexcusable to catch it running backwards at the 5-yard line is crazy. He's lucky it wasn't a safety, to be honest with you, because although he didn't possess the ball, he did touch the ball.
Yeah, that was
outside.
That was Fugazi.
You know what I mean?
That should have been a lot worse than it was.
Right. Yeah.
I did not understand what the ruling was for a while.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit surprised. I obviously know Marcus Jones active. I was surprised we didn't see Jabril Peppers go back there after that one. A guy who has experience with returning punts, and he did everything at Michigan. And also, you mentioned Jack Jones. He has 0 special teams snaps so far this year, according to Pro Football Reference.
Which that speaks to what he must be doing in practice. Again, it's frustrating, but we also don't see maybe Marcus Jones has given up a ton of big plays in practice, and it's just like, okay, we can't play him against
which is
good receivers.
Which is possible. It was just weird because he was out there. He was the starter. He was so much the starter that he didn't play in the first preseason game when all the starters sat. He sat with all of the starters, and then we come back the next week and Miles Bryant had passed him, and it was like, what the hell is going on here? It's just bizarre. And so we'll see what happens.
Those behind the scenes things where we'll find out after it plays out.
I do think for me, it's frustrating for me because it's the Belichick thing where, like you said, instead of going with the flashy guy who has elite athleticism and makes plays that no one else can make, I'll go with the slower, less flashy, more reliable guy who, he doesn't have the ability to make some of the plays that this guy can make, but he's not going to give up as many plays as the other guy might give up if he's put in that situation.
Worked out for Juwan Bentley.
It did.
No one talks crap about Juwan Bentley anymore. It's like, every once in a while you'll see him in space, but he makes tackles in space. He takes good angles. It's if you do what you're supposed to do and you do what you're coached, you execute the way you're coached, you can survive as long as you're smart and you have – Miles Bryant is in the NFL. You know what I mean? Like, he's not getting toasted every week. Even against Isaiah McKenzie, he was competitive. Like, you weren't seeing him like get a catch or a reception on him, and then the guy's taking it to the house. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, he's doing what he can for his skill set, and maybe Marcus Jones just isn't. That's the difference. You know, he can do it, but he's not doing it. You can have all the athleticism in the world, but as we know, football is not just for athletes; it's for football players.
Yeah.
So if you're not, reading routes well, if you're not communicating the right way, if you're not doing your job, you're not going to play. And we can't see what's happening. And like I said, I assume it's something behind the scenes where we'll find out.
Of course. Yeah.
Later down the road.
And it's also, I mean, corner is one of the hardest positions to transition
Slot
from
corner
college.
too. Slot corner.
That's very difficult. So, I mean, like we were saying with Devontae Parker, like, let's give it to the end of the season here, I think, and see what Marcus Jones can do later. And obviously, I think the other aspect of this is they got a lot of slot corners on this team, and they only got 2 or 3 outside guys.
Yeah.
So, and they like to play their safeties. So Marcus Jones is just in a much tougher position to get reps than Jack Jones, which I did also kind of want to follow up and ask you about Jonathan Jones on the outside this year. Do you think that is going to be, I don't know, how's that going to play into this game? How have you liked what you've seen? What are your thoughts on that?
Marcus Jones is just easily their best cornerback. I'm not worried about him at all.
I agree.
Yeah,
Marcus Jones is the best cornerback.
I'm sorry, John Jones. John Jones.
I know.
Jeez, there's freaking 3 of them. That's so ridiculous.
I was going through the snap count the other day, and they're both Jay Jones on the thing. I was like, I thought we might end up with one of those like XFL situations where we're gonna have full names on the back of the jerseys this year.
But yeah, I'm sorry. So John Jones, he is like easily their best corner. No, he's not big, but he is excellent when he's out of phase. He's got maybe the best ball skills in terms of consistency. Like Jack Jones, we know he has them, but we haven't seen him do it at the pro level. And John Jones is very smart. He's not the guy that you're like, oh, he might give up a big play this week. Like if he does, it's probably because the guy earned it. So I think he's been good outside. There may be games where the matchup isn't really great for him because it's a really big receiver, but I don't think they're going to make any adjustments to that unless he's just like getting mossed. Like if he gets mossed like 3 times, it's like, okay, we got to tap out. But I think he's been good outside. I really like what I've seen from him so far.
And it's not going to happen much more than it would have happened against Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh's got massive wide receivers, right? And maybe if you play Minnesota, who they're going to play this year, maybe if it's Minnesota, you're not going to put him one-on-one against Justin Jefferson. But like Justin Jefferson's going to do it to anyone. It doesn't really matter who it is, So like, yeah, I agree with you. I agree wholeheartedly.
Do we want to talk about the how the front seven's going to match up here? Because I thought the front 7 for New England did a very good job these first couple of weeks. I'm impressed with the defensive tackle room in particular, but also 2 not so great offensive line rooms. But also, this Baltimore offensive line has not been great.
Right. Yeah, I think this line is it's going to be the difference maker. The times that Lamar, and again, the last time they played Lamar, it was a little off because there was a torrential downpour. They were down in the second half when the rain started. So it completely changed the outlook of everything. So you got to take all that
center
with a
that
grain of
couldn't
salt.
snap the ball.
Right.
Well, that didn't help either. Yeah.
But the biggest thing was all their good plays were when they moved Lamar off his spot. Whether it was a blitz, whether it was just getting inside the pocket and forcing him to go off his first read. Like that's what you want to do with any great quarterback. Just take away their first option, and then it's all right. Let's try to make a play now that we've made it at least harder on this rep. I think Judon is a great guy to have because he knows Lamar Jackson. He was there when he got into the league. One of the biggest things with Lamar is that if you haven't played him before, you can't really predict what it's going to be like playing him. Like I think it's like with Russell Wilson in the Super Bowl where I remember when the Pats were preparing, they had one of their like defensive backs or something just do the scramble stuff because it was the only person they had who had anywhere near his athleticism. So you got one edge defender who knows exactly what he needs to do against Lamar. Josh Uche did a really good job against him when they played in 2020. Barmore, if you get Barmore, I think we're going to see a lot of 5-0 fronts where you got 5 defensive linemen on the line of scrimmage. So basically the offensive line is going to check so it's man-to-man. If you can do that with Barmore against Tyler Linderbaum, who is very smart, very athletic, but very tiny, he is going to put the pocket in Lamar Jackson's lap, and that's the kind of thing you want to see. Dietrich Wise played a lot of defensive tackle in their 4-down looks the last time these guys played. He was pretty disruptive. Don't want him on the outside because he can't contain Lamar Jackson.
Right.
But I think that's where you get your guys like Anthony Jennings. I think could at least do a solid job. If not, put Uche out there. He's got the speed, he's got the athleticism to handle that kind of thing. Obviously, Devon Gottschalk's been very good. He's one of the more explosive interior guys.
One of the best defensive linemen in the league, if you ask Bill.
Yeah, true.
Honestly, I thought that was a crazy statement to make, but when I watch, if he's one-on-one, he doesn't lose very often.
Yeah.
Like the doubles, he's not great against, but he does not lose to guys one-on-one a lot.
Yeah, he demands so many doubles too. I mean, if you watch that Pittsburgh game, that was a lot of, all right, Godjaw's doubled and he's not really going anywhere, but now everybody else has a one-on-one and somebody's going to win it.
Exactly. Right. And then you got Guy who, if he's doubled, he's at least usually going to make a mess. And if he's one-on-one, he's probably going to push somebody back and affect the play. So I think the front seven is easy. Not even the front seven. I think the defensive line is easily the strength of their team. Obviously, the safeties, I think it's 1A, 1B. But if it's a 1A, I would go with the defensive line. I'm confident in their ability to at least prevent Lamar Jackson from making the plays that you're just like, that could have been prevented. Like, yes, it's Lamar, but you got to do better. I think that they'll do a solid job in that regard. I'm looking forward to that matchup.
Yeah. I will say, going back through the film, and maybe I could be wrong in this, I did think in the front seven, Uche in the past has had an issue with kind of over committing to certain things. And I think we saw that with Mac Wilson and Raekwon McMillan at certain points. Both have more speed than the guys they've had there in the past, so they can recover when they overcommit on stuff. But in the front seven, I think that's my biggest concern is if Lamar's going to break off one of these long runs, it's going to be because all of the linebackers over pursue a little bit and he might have a cutback lane. So I think you're going to have to watch that backside on every one of his runs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And again, like Mac Wilson's thing is he knows he's not very strong and he's more of an like athletic guy. So you see him and because he is that way, he also knows he can recover. Like I think there were a couple of times last week where he did overshoot the gap, but then popped right back where he was supposed to be.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of that give and take where it's all right, your skill set, do what you got to do. But if it doesn't work, then you're in trouble.
Yeah. Margin for error is smaller with him,
especially against someone like Lamar who has that speed.
Right. But one good thing is Mac Wilson was on the Browns. He's not, he's familiar with Lamar Jackson. So that's a huge plus. Raekwon McMillan, I think, is one of those guys where he just needs to like put it on tape. And it's not like he's new to the league, but he didn't really play much defense. He was more of a special teams guy before he got to the Pats. Then he was hurt, obviously, and all that stuff. But he's a smart player. I think, like, I believe on one of the plays in the first week where he kind of let somebody get open behind him. The next week, he did a great job getting underneath it. Was that? I think that was McMillan. Sorry,
I think you're right.
I
think you're right. Yeah.
But it's part of the reason they say it's extended preseason. Put it on tape, then our coaches can tell you what to do. It's exactly. It's one thing when you've heard it from somebody else, but when you have Bill Belichick, it's Steve Belichick, and all these really smart guys who know their system and what they want to get done inside of it, then you can say, okay, never backpedal off play action again. Like never. You turn your back and you look for that crosser. And there's some teams that don't do that. It's insane, but some teams don't do things like that. So, learn, make the corrections. I think McMillan's done a good job of that. Wilson, I think, because he started and didn't even know he was going to last week, there may be more of a learning curve. But they're athletic guys. They're smart. They're tough. I'm not really worried about them. Maybe they'll give up a play or two, this week. But I think if Belichick thinks it's really that much of a concern, they're not going to be on the field that way.
I agree. No. What are you expecting? What we've gone through this whole thing. Do you expect? Now it's first game in the new stadium, not the new stadium, but the
renovated stadium,
the under construction stadium, right? Not done until next year, of course. But what do you expect is going to happen out there on Sunday afternoon?
I think we just have to prepare for Lamar to make it frustrating. I think it's going to be competitive because I think there are matchups on both sides where one unit really can make a difference. And it's going to prevent anybody from kind of going crazy. I'm not super confident in their ability to run on the Ravens front the way they did against the Steelers. Even though the Steelers are good, because they didn't have TJ Watt, they had to move Cameron Hayward outside, and that kind of affected what was going on with their interior. They're very deep, but I mean, still a third-string defensive tackle is a third-string defensive tackle for a reason. They can be talented, but you've got a very good Patriots offensive line. You can capitalize on those things. This Ravens line is freaking stacked. There are a lot of really strong big dudes on that line. So I'm not quite as confident on their ability to run consistently. And then honestly, the Ravens secondary scares me. Like Marcus Williams has been fantastic back there at safety. Their rookie corners are making plays. They had some great drives on the ball where they disrupted some plays and jarred the ball loose. And they're looking really smart. They're just such a well-coached unit. You can see, like, even Kyle Williams. I remember there was one play. I think they were communicating with palms, and he just looks like he's been in the system for years. Like, you would not know that they have 3 rookies taking a good amount of snaps. Maybe
except for a couple of those plays late in the game.
Right, of course. And that's one of those things where Belichick acknowledged, like, there's a learning curve, and that was not something you're going to see very often from the Ravens, because again, now it's on tape for them. They know what they did wrong, and they're smart, and they know these players. Like, when they draft them, these are very smart players. So I don't expect to see the lapses in coverage that we saw last week, or the just insane performance you saw from Tua. But yeah, honestly, I'm definitely nervous. I don't want them to have to pass a ton. And I don't even feel comfortable making a prediction, because we don't know what the offense is going to look like in week 3, but we do know that the Ravens have a very good defense. I think the Patriots defense will keep it competitive, and that'll be the main reason they're in the game. Is anybody surprised? That's kind of how it always goes.
Yeah.
But I do think it'll be, if it's a 2-score game, I don't think it's going to be more than a field goal.
Yeah.
Like field goal. Yeah.
I guess.
Okay.
All right.
If there's one player for the Patriots that's the X factor here, who do you think it's going to be?
I'd say Nelson Aguilar. It's either him or Bourne. If Jacoby Myers is hurt, it's Bourne, I think, because Aguilar, I think, is going to slide into that role, and he's going to get opportunities to capitalize on them. Then it's okay, Bourne, can you give Mac another option? If Myers is good to go, then it's like, all right, Nelly, you got to have a real good game, my guy. Like, at least give them the 2 guys they have to think about. That'll make life easier on everybody else.
See, I would have gone the defensive in there. I would have said Devin McCourty, just for having that speed at the back end and being able to keep plays in front, make sure you don't have coverage busts. It's hard enough to cover Lamar Jackson in that passing game. What they're doing this year, you got to make sure everybody's on the same page, close down on windows. I'd love to see an interception this week. If you can get your hands on one of those, I think if somebody gets it, it's probably going to be Devin, who... By the way, I don't know if you guys saw, there was a great Athletic article today where they sat down with Devin McCourty and asked if he could remember every quarterback that he has ever intercepted. He walked through all of them. And there was a quote in there where he was talking about the game where they played against Luke Falk when he was that Jets quarterback at one time.
We played for the Jets.
Yeah.
Jesus.
when McCourty picked off Falk, and the quote he had on it was something like, "Oh yeah, they had a 3rd or 4th stringer go in that game. We knew they had no chance." That killed me.
That was like a precursor to the Zach Wilson game where he just threw all those just horrendous interceptions.
Yeah,
I feel like the last time you saw that kind of game from the Jets, I think it was the Luke Falk game where he threw. I think he just lofted it, and it was just a really easy pick for
every time.
I think both of those were I think the Falk game came first, because that I think happened when Zach Wilson missed time with mono. I'm pretty sure that's how that went
Sam
down.
Darnold, you mean? Sam Darnold?
Oh my
They've
goodness.
had so many bad quarterbacks that
dude,
it's just all blend together. But yeah,
my brain can't handle that. Not right now. Like, I can't. That timeline is not going to be on my side. If I can throw in a defensive guy, if I can cheat a little bit, I would say Jalen Mills, because McCourty is going to be McCourty. If Jalen Mills gets turned around too badly when they play cover 1, because yes, the Patriots are playing more cover 2, but they do it situationally. Like, they're playing cover 2 to defend play action passes and in long yardage situations. It's not their base. They're still a 1-high team, which means one-on-one matchups outside. If Jalen Mills gives up a play underneath or whatever to Rashad Bateman, it makes a false step or whatever, Bateman can take it to the house.
Yeah.
So that's if offense, obviously you need another receiver, but if I had to do one overall, now I think about it, it probably would be Jalen.
Can't be giving up 60-yard touchdown passes to the Ravens.
And he can do it both ways. One of them was on a quick throw that he just ran and took it to the house. The other one, he got behind the defense. Like, he can do both. So
he's good.
And I think special teams are going to be key too. I mean, we saw the Ravens get a kickoff return in that last game, which was huge. We saw the Patriots get a little bit lucky on special teams last week in a number of different ways in the punt return game.
Maybe have an explosive returner back
from a young corner.
Just I don't know. I mean,
I thought Cody Davis nearly blocked a kick week 1, and I think it was Raekwon McMillan nearly blocked a punt when they brought a rush. So
they're due for one.
They're
Also,
getting cooked.
one thing, I'm not sure if it's an X factor because we don't know what the situation is going to be, but if Kyle Duggar can't play, that's bad news.
That's going to be really bad.
Because he is the one who matched up with Andrews last year. And you see him every week. Like, he gets targeted on a couple crossing routes, which are very hard to defend because they play with outside leverage. So Duggar is in chase mode. He did a pretty good job against Andrews last time. If that happens again, they don't have anybody who can cover him. Adrian Phillips will be competitive, but he's too small. Jabril Peppers will be a little less competitive, but he's also way too small. So if they don't have Duggar, it's going to be tough in man coverage. I can see brackets on Andrews. They don't do that often, but if Duggar can't go, I can see it.
And I think that also, I think there's just an interesting situation here where if the Pats are selling out to say we're not going to let Lamar scramble on us and we're going to make sure Mark Andrews is covered, all of a sudden these safety body types start getting used up, and maybe Will Likely is the guy where it's, all right, Pats take away the top options. Ravens are going to have to win with their depth guy. We're going to find out what's this guy made of. And having that extra tight end, especially if Duggar can't go, then if Mark Andrews is seeing brackets and McCourty's playing over the top, you might get some favorable matchups with an extra tight end.
Definitely. I mean, if it's an Isaiah Likely game, so be it. I don't care.
Right. That's been the Bill Belichick thing for years. It's
exactly.
Can you beat us with your fourth or fifth guy?
Right.
If you get beat by Andrews and or Bateman, then your defensive plan did not work, and you should, it's not going to be fun on Monday.
Yeah.
But again, if it's Duvernay, I think as long as Duvernay is healthy, I forget what his status is. But,
he's okay, but like,
but if any of their depth guys are the ones that are like moving the chains or scoring touchdowns, all right. Like Willie Snead scored a touchdown last time they played. Like, okay, big whoop.
Right.
You tip your cap and you go on to the next drive.
Exactly. I agree. All right, we're going to get into our final segment, our little fun segment away from football. But before we do, I have some breaking news. I'm going to break some news here on the podcast. It's not good news. It doesn't actually have anything to do with the Patriots, but breaking news from Woj. Boston Celtics coach Ime Udoka is facing possible disciplinary action, including a significant suspension for an unspecified violation of organizational guidelines. Discussions are ongoing with the Celtics on a final determination.
That's really weird.
Yikes. Super vague. No idea what it means. But sounds bad.
Speaking of unspecified violations, one guy we didn't talk about was Equale, defensive tackle, who's back from suspension this week. Suspended for the first 2 weeks, and we still have no idea what he was suspended for. There's been no information on what it was.
Did they say whether it was like an internal or a league thing?
It was a league thing.
It was, yeah.
2-game suspension. We still don't know. We have no idea what it was. He's back on the roster. Right. He was in their pass rushing group in the preseason. It was him.
And he looks better as a run defender too.
Yeah. He's been he was kind of an asset for them at the end of last season. He came on stronger than I expected. So this game probably wouldn't. I would have a hard time seeing them playing him over Dietrich Wise in a lot of those looks. But
honestly. I don't know, just because Wise, like his length makes up for the fact that he's slow because he's a big dude. Like I don't really like even talking about that because like the guy's almost 300 pounds. Like he's not going to move super well. But Equale, just because he's a little smaller, I think he may be a little more competitive in those situations where it's like, all right, you're in the backfield. Can you actually bring Lamar down? But again, Wise's length makes up for that. So it'll be interesting to see. But in those like 4 down looks, I could see him rotating in for Barmore or Wise, just keep those guys fresh or whatever. However they want to scheme those matchups.
Yeah. And we'll see who they decide to have active on game day too. You can only have so many players out there.
True.
So maybe
very true. Maybe Equale might not be active just because he hasn't been practicing the last few weeks. He's been suspended, right?
Exactly.
So and that pass rushing group has worked so far. I don't know if there's a reason to touch it at this point.
Exactly. I would agree. So all right. So that's what we got for Patriots discussion. Listen, I agree with you. I'm just hoping for a competitive game. And the Ravens are a very good team. And I know they blew it last week against the Dolphins. I get it, right? It was embarrassing. It was terrible. But they also blew doors on the Dolphins in the first half. That's what they're capable of doing. And so if you're a Patriots fan, you should be a little bit nervous. You should be a little bit nervous, but it's also a nice test to see if what Belichick has started to do is working. You're you're looking at it saying, we're trying to get better. We're trying to get faster. We're trying to get more athletic. We're trying to play with these fast teams, Baltimore is one of those fast teams that you're trying to play with. If you can keep up with their speed, I think it's a good sign moving forward. As you said, extension of the preseason. We get it. We're 3 weeks in. We're not. It's not the finished product. But if we start to see some improvement and we start to see them be able to play with those teams, now we can look at it and say, okay, we're feeling better about where we're headed.
Agreed.
So all right. So let's go into our final little segment here, and we got a little sounder for it as well. So here we go.
And now for something we think you'll really like. This week in sports history.
That's awesome.
All right. So Matt, why don't you start off with you? Do you have one?
Yeah, I got a Patriots one here.
All right. Patriots one. Let's hear it.
We're talking about Patriots week 3 and early season struggles. Well, we are recording this on the 21st of September. Shout out to Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yes. First song I listened to this morning.
Yep.
Oh,
there you go.
But this is the anniversary of the Patriots' 16-9 win over the then Oakland Raiders in 2014, the game before the infamous Kansas City blowout. I remember that one. That was one of the more unsatisfying wins. That was one of those where you go, oh, that was a football game. And
Yep.
then you go do something else.
Yeah. That was an ugly game. That's a good one.
I think Gronk had the lone touchdown for the offense that day, if I'm remembering that one correctly.
Sounds right.
A cloudy September afternoon in Foxborough.
Yeah, it was a nasty game. I was at that one. It was terrible. They won though, so I mean, it wasn't that bad, but it wasn't great. The next week, I was eating buffalo wings in Providence with friends and watching that game on Monday Night Football. Like, this is the worst thing of all time. It was terrible.
And then Trent Dilfer said that it was all over. And
that's right.
Brady retired.
They're not good anymore.
Patriots never won another Super Bowl, and it's been a long 8 years since.
Oh, good point about the Raiders game.
Right? That was his first season.
Yeah, that would have been
Jimmy G.
Yeah,
Jimmy G's first season. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Jimmy G's first. Derek Carr's first.
Yep. Will Fork had a pick on that day. By the way, fun fact: Vince Wilfork and Jamal Adams, same amount of career interceptions.
I'm not that surprised, honestly. I'm not that surprised.
Fantastic.
Just two freak athletes who were better going
That's
down.
right. See, that's it. See, exactly. So, all right, Taylor, you got one.
Next, yes. So this is actually my 2 home cities. So lock in. New York Highlanders first baseman Hal Chase has 22 putouts to the MLB record in a 6-3 win over Chicago White Sox at Southside Park. I was born in Chicago, and New York is where I spend most of my life. So
Love it.
it's personal.
See,
It's a
there
great
you go.
stat that you pulled out there, Tay.
Hey,
22
man,
putouts,
I
found
just
it all
did
by
the
himself.
research, and
You
I
know what I
just
mean?
spent hours looking for this stuff. I didn't get it from Pat in a text right before
Totally
the show.
not.
That didn't
No,
happen. No,
absolutely not.
call me.
So yes, that's the way it goes. Listen, it's a completely ridiculous thing that I'm asking our guests to do, and the first 2 guests have completely dropped the ball and not done anything about it, and I don't blame them at all. And so I come prepared with extras just in case. You know what I mean?
I liked it. I like that you chose my my spots.
See?
I
There
really
you go.
appreciate that.
See?
I'm
That's
glad we
it.
did this.
So I also have one from September 21st. This is from 1934. St. Louis Cardinals played the Brooklyn Dodgers in a doubleheader. Dizzy Dean and Paul Dean were brothers. They both pitched for the St. Louis Cardinals, and they both had shutouts
No
with
way.
Paul Dean throwing a no-hitter on the nightcap.
That's
So it was
that's
pretty
very, very cool.
pretty crazy. Brothers with shutouts on the same day, one of them being a no-hitter. So
That's awesome.
pretty cool from 1934.
Yeah, how often do you have that happen?
I mean, like, I don't even know when would that ever even happen? Like, the fact that they're in the same rotation, pitching on the same day, and you have a doubleheader. I guess back in the 30s, you had doubleheaders more often than you do now, but still.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
That's
If you want me to give a little fun fact here for you,
I love
Pat,
we
on the
love
way
fun
out.
facts around here. This is great.
I'm basically just going to rehash the same one I did last week because the schedule has put all these AFC North teams at the front. This is the earliest in a season the Patriots have ever played a game against the Ravens at home. And the second earliest game they have ever played against the Ravens. If you can remember the earliest game that they've ever played against the Ravens, it was in Baltimore. It was a Sunday night game.
I know exactly what it is. I hated that game. I hated this game.
Do you remember this? Do you remember what game I'm
It was
talking
the
about,
Torrey
Pat?
Smith game, which
Yep.
the only reason I don't think about it in like a worse regard is because he went through something horrible, and I was honestly like, dude, hats off, like good for you. I was very happy for him, but as a Pats fan, I was like, that was embarrassing.
Yeah.
Well, that was the game where the kick went right over the upright, and Bill was trying to grab a
Bill
ref
was
as they're going off the
chasing the
field.
ref out.
And that game would have been the game everybody was talking about with the replacement refs that year, if not for the fact that Monday Night Football was that was the Sunday night game. Monday Night Football was the Fail Mary, but that was September 23rd in 2012.
Unbelievable.
2012. Yep.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I mean, just
goosebumps.
brutal. That's one of the worst ones I've ever seen. Because I can't even. I just like That's.
I loved it today. We brought that up, and we like two just obscure, awful Pats games. It was the Ravens game, and then we were talking about the Nick Folk game where
that's what you get.
Got the penalty that, as you said, Pat, has never been called before and wasn't called since.
Yeah, because they scrubbed the rule from the record book after that game. They were like, "Hey, you know what? That rule is terrible. There's a reason we never called it before."
Didn't Logan Ryan have a pick six in that game? Pretty sure.
Yes, that was when he did the Marshawn Lynch thing. Yes,
that's right.
Yes, that's exactly what that was.
Oh my lord, dude.
I was in high school at the time, and I had to do some event at the school that Sunday, so I didn't get home until partway through the game. And I remember being on Twitter, like watching that clip as I was trying to do whatever event I had signed up for.
Unbelievable,
boy,
unbelievable. Woj, by the way, on ESPN with Scott Van Pelt said this is a Celtics matter, not a league issue. It's an internal Boston look at Udoka and this violation of team guidelines. And supposedly the suspension's coming within 24 to 48 hours. So
do we know what it is, or we'll just know how bad
no
it is
report on what it is, but we're just going to know what the suspension is, and then maybe something will come out. But it's not a league thing; it's the Celtics thing. Somebody tweeted out that Nia Long walking to practice, and Brad was like, "Damn," and Udoka was like, "Lost it." But of course, that's not true. But that's
Tay, you were saying before this that like if the Celtics are your fun team, then here you are on a Celtics podcast. Whoever saw that coming?
Yeah, that's a weird coincidence. I think I jinxed them, honestly. This is my fault.
It's your fault. Yep.
Whatever you do, not say anything about any other Boston sports teams.
What's that other B one?
Except the Red Sox. Say whatever you want about the Red Sox because they can't possibly get worse than they are. So like maybe if you say stuff about them, then the good things will happen as opposed to bad things.
Hey, I think the Red Sox have a shot this year.
See, look at that. See, you never know.
If
you
they
know
win
what I mean?
a championship, I need compensation.
Maybe they'll. Well, I don't think they'll make the playoffs, but I mean, you never know. So
when is the MLB playoffs? I have
soon.
Not the slightest clue.
I think.
I feel like that always happens. I'm like, oh, is the season about to start? And then someone will be like, dude, they're about to be in the playoffs.
I played fantasy. I played fantasy baseball this year, and I like week 1 of the regular season. I was like, okay, the season's over. I mean, it's not. It's fantasy playoffs is going on right now. I'm in them, but I'm like, I don't know. I'm not checking it. I'm too busy playing fantasy football and doing football stuff. Like,
I remember fantasy baseball was the first sport I got into. And I remember having to manage, like, all right, I got to make sure I have a pitcher that has 2 starts this week. And I was just doing that every week. I did that for like a month. I was like, I can't do this.
Too much.
Too much. I don't have the attention span to draft my own team or manage it in fantasy.
Yeah.
Like I keep saying, all right, this year it's different. I took a year off. I just didn't appreciate it enough, and this is the year that I'll really care. And I just never remember that I have one until someone's making fun of me for getting blown out because 3 of my guys are on a bye.
Yeah, well, I have 18 teams, so we're like on the opposite end of the spectrum.
Was that a joke, or do you literally have 18?
No, I literally have 18 teams. Yeah.
Where do you find time?
How do you have time for that and children?
Listen, man, you make time. I guess I don't know. I just do. A lot of them are like dynasty leagues, so it's just kind of the upkeep of the league. It's not like the draft stuff or whatever. So not that, that makes it any better, but that's
it's 18 fantasy leagues. That is literally incomprehensible.
Yeah, no, it's a lot. Yeah.
The Antonio Cromartie of fantasy leagues.
I am. Yeah, I am.
Philip Rivers fantasy leagues.
So, all right. Let's get you the hell out of here, Taylor.
Yeah.
We appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for coming through. Before you leave, everyone should be following you, Tay. But just in case they're not. Okay. By the way, love the new headshots with the NFL in the background. Look pretty awesome.
Very sharp.
Looks
I didn't even know that was happening.
your
Dude.
boy's
I did not
legit.
groom myself at all. I
That's
found
gonna
out
look-
that day.
That's gonna look amazing on your LinkedIn. If that's not already your LinkedIn profile picture, it should be.
Honestly, now that I'm actually employed, I forgot about my LinkedIn, but that is a very good idea.
See, look at that.
All
So,
right.
but anyways, why don't you, just tell everyone where they can see you and read you and hear you and everything else.
Sure. So Twitter, I am at tkyles39, KYLES. I'm also writing for CLNS this year. So if you look up Taylor Kyles CLNS, you'll see some of my stuff on there. And obviously, Pat's Pulpit, my first love. I'm gonna be doing some stuff here still, like previews and stuff like that with our good buddy Burn. And that's pretty much it.
Love
pretty
it.
much it. I just said like 3 different things.
Yeah,
but-
well,
Yeah.
I mean, keep yourself busy. That's all.
And look out
So-
for next gen stats stuff. If you see any Patriots games or anything, or some primetime games with next gen stats, just know that your old buddy Tay sent them.
Love it. Love it.
Can we get a route chart of Devontae Parker, please? I was looking for that the other day. And
I can give it to you right now. And maybe a little bit of this. That's about it.
That's great. That's great. Also, we're gonna have to over the off season. We have to bring you back on for a Marvel podcast. There's been a whole lot of Marvel stuff that's happened since the Armchair Superheroes were around. So
real quick, what do you think about She-Hulk so far?
I actually really like it.
Yes.
I like the way that they are poking fun at things and they're having like it's okay to have fun. I think
Mhm.
people we expect so much from them that it's like it's okay to just have fun
right.
with a show, and like this show has been a lot of fun, and people are very upset because like they're pointing out like serious disparities that women have, and they're like, well, that's just stupid, and I'm like, well, no, actually that's like the truth, but no one just
Right.
says that stuff, you know what I mean?
Right.
And they're like, well, no it isn't, and I'm like, yeah, it is, and they're like, well, okay, maybe it is, maybe you're right, you know what I mean? Like, but it's just
Right.
and it's not the best show, but it's like, but it's fun, and like
Right,
I'm
exactly.
okay
It's
with that,
entertaining.
like.
Very
And that's it.
entertaining.
Like I know what I'm expecting. I'm not expecting, Endgame when I turn it on,
Mhm.
but we're having fun for half an hour, and I'm okay with that.
And then we get into cameos. I think this might be the Daredevil week.
I know.
So-
I think so too. Yeah, dude. That the drop at the end, I was like, oh my god, there it is. Like, yeah, it was
Oh,
great.
the one thing about the show that I cannot stand, they make it seem like Tatiana Maslany is this just horribly unattractive person that, like,
I
if
know.
she's not She-Hulk, no one would find her attractive. I'm like, get the
Which is
out of here. Are you kidding
Yeah,
me?
I know.
She's stunning. Like, literally, like, actively being insulted. And I'm like, she is such a sweet, beautiful person. On top
Yeah.
of this, like, she seems cool as hell in real life, too.
Well, of course,
That's
and
my
that's,
one real gripe is that
I
like,
agree with
let's
you,
be
but
real,
it's
she's
the she's all that effect, right? Where it's like she's clearly good looking, but it's like, well, she's not really, even though she is. But it's one of those things.
That's it. But other than that, like you said, super entertaining. Like the show's all over the place a little bit. Also,
Yeah.
the supporting cast, dude. Pug,
It's
I'm obsessed
awesome.
with. I'm obsessed with Pug. The best friend, Gina Gonzalez, I think her name is.
Yeah,
something like
she's
that.
awesome.
Ginger Gonzalez, awesome.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, this is not the Super Podcast show. I'm sorry, I opened that.
I
can of
know,
worms.
but no, but
Watch
that's
She-Hulk.
yeah.
I
it.
have not. I don't know if I've watched a piece of Marvel content since Endgame. I got behind on stuff and just now I'm
That's tough.
overwhelmed by the
Yeah,
amount
you
of
got-
hooking up.
and
It's
you
like
know
Grey's
what?
Anatomy. Once you're behind, it's like
Oh,
that's
man.
like months of commitment.
I will.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I'm gonna make sure to catch up on the Spider-Man movies. I haven't seen the most recent one.
Yes,
I like Tom
need to
Holland
see that one.
Spider-Man.
Oh,
So
Need to see
I
that.
know
That's a
I
top.
can't
That's a
believe
top
I
10
have-
MCU movie.
I haven't had it spoiled for me somehow, and I'm just tempting fate right now. So I'm gonna have to see this now before I log on to Twitter again. But
There you go. Now that someone knows it hasn't
Be
been spoiled
nice
for
to
you,
him,
someone's
Twitter.
gonna
Don't you
spoil it.
dare let
I know,
him
right?
enjoy it.
Yeah.
I feel like I almost might have spoiled it for you. I feel like I tweet about it like once a month when I watch it. And it just makes me bawl, and I'm like, Zendaya is
I love
so good.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. So, all right, let's go before, because I mean, this could be a whole nother hour of podcast, but
ADHD, it would be. So
I know, right?
Force me out of here.
so, well, thanks everyone. We appreciate you guys listening, and we'll be back on Sunday, a little bit later on Sunday because I'll be at the game, but I'll be back on Sunday. We'll be back on Sunday for a instant reaction to hopefully the Patriots win, but even if not, just at least a competitive game.
I'm predicting a win. I'm going out and I'm doing it.
Look at that.
Pats win this game.
I love it.
I'm gonna predict a close loss because I'm a jinx. So
There you go.
Be the opposite.
There you go. I'm predicting a loss too, but hopefully it's a good game. We'll see.
I'm a lone wolf over here.
I
If
love
you
it.
lose to the Ravens in week 3, like there's much Lamar Jackson and the Ravens in week 3. There's worse
Coming
things.
off a devastating loss in Miami, like I feel like if they had blown out Miami, I'd feel differently. Coming off a devastating loss against Miami, I just feel like they're going to be extra motivated. But you never know. Sometimes the games the Patriots win. You know,
If the Patriots win this one, I'm going to be very interested to see the national media opinions afterwards, because the Patriots haven't gotten a lot of coverage through 2 weeks, and
right?
rightfully so. They're just kind of there in the middle
I can
right
speak
now.
to that personally as the person who partially is responsible for what goes out of there. It's not been a lot of past stuff. So
Yeah.
No, and that's how it is. But you beat the Ravens, and Ravens are now 1-2 with 2 losses to the AFC East, and suddenly people are going to
Yep.
talk a little bit differently.
AFC beast, actually.
That's right.
Beast, yes.
No doubt.
Jets need to pick it up a little bit.
Joe Flacco killing
Hey,
it.
they were doing the Lord's work last week by beating the Browns.
Hey,
so
they
That's
did
true.
say
That's true.
go
they
Steelers
did say
tomorrow night.
Zach Wilson's going to be practicing soon, and they're hoping to get him ready for Week 4. So
I don't know if that's encouraging.
I don't know if that's
I
good
don't know.
I
for
don't know
Jets
if that-
fans or not, but I mean, there it is. So, anyways, all right, guys, thanks a lot, and thank you, Taylor, and we'll talk to you soon. We'll have you back on at some point. We got 3 hours left in us, so we do a few more shows together.
Hell yeah.
So, see you guys.